There is a point in Kingshot where your account stops asking you for thousands of resources and starts asking you for millions. And when you reach that point, most players make the same mistake. They look at their resource bar and think, I need to farm more. But that's actually the wrong way to think about it. The real question is, why are you making your main account do all the farming in the first place? Because your main account should be spending its time becoming stronger. Your second account should be doing the boring part, gathering, saving, waiting, and quietly building a stockpile that you can turn into resources whenever your main account needs them. That's what a farm account really is. It's not another account you have to play. It's a system you build once, then let it work for you. And there is a huge difference between having a farm account and having a good farm account. You can spend weeks developing one and still end up with an account that's producing far less than it should. You can also make one account with very little investment, barely touch it every day, and eventually have enough resources sitting there to completely change how you play your main. So in this video, I don't want to give you another basic create a second account and gather resources guide. Instead, we're going to build the farm backwards. We're going to start with one question. What does your main account actually need? Then we're going to build the farm around that answer. Because once you understand that, you'll know what deserves your resources, what should stay at the lowest level possible, which research is actually worth doing, how many troops you really need, when you should transfer resources, and when transferring them too early is actually hurting you. And there's one more thing. Your farm account becomes more valuable the longer you keep it. A farm that looks almost useless after 1 week can become incredibly important after 1 month. And when the really expensive stages of Kingshot arrive, you'll understand why the players who prepared their farms early are sitting comfortably while everyone else is desperately trying to gather enough resources. So forget everything you've heard about farms being just a second account. For the next few minutes, think of it as something completely different. Think of it as your resource engine, and let's build one properly. Let's start with the first decision, creating the account. Go to your profile, open settings, go to characters, and create a new character. If you prefer, you can also create a completely separate game account using another login. And honestly, I prefer keeping the farm separate from the main account. The reason is simple. Your farm is something you're going to keep for a long time, so you don't want your entire setup depending on some temporary workaround for switching characters or running multiple sessions. And before you start playing, make absolutely sure the farm is in the same kingdom as your main account. This sounds obvious, but creating a farm in the wrong kingdom can turn the entire account into wasted time. Now, here's the first thing I want you to understand. Your farm is not supposed to be a second main account. This is the biggest mindset difference. Your main account is trying to become stronger. Your farm is trying to become more efficient. That means your farm doesn't need expensive heroes, it doesn't need unnecessary buildings, and it doesn't need to compete in every event. Every decision you make should answer one question. Does this help my farm gather, store, protect, or transfer more useful resources? If the answer is no, it's probably not worth your investment. Now let's talk about your first major target. Town Center 19. You don't have to stop exactly there forever, but getting your farm toward this point should be one of your biggest early goals. Why? Because as the account develops, you unlock more useful systems and eventually gain access to features that make the farm much more valuable. And while you're pushing your town center, don't ignore your chapter missions. These missions can provide resources, coins, speed-ups, and other rewards that help keep your progression moving without requiring you to spend money. The goal isn't to make the farm powerful. The goal is to make it functional as quickly as possible. Now let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes I see with farm accounts. People upgrade everything. They upgrade every building because the game tells them they can. Don't do that. Your farm should have a very different building priority from your main account. Your town center matters because it unlocks progression. Your barracks, stable, and shooting range matter because you need enough troops to keep your gathering marches active. Your academy matters because research is going to permanently improve the efficiency of the account. And your infirmary matters, because you don't want one attack or event to completely destroy the troops you've spent time building. But then we have the storage building. This is where things get interesting. On your main account, increasing storage capacity sounds great. On your farm, it can actually work against your goal. Why? Because some resources become protected, and protected resources aren't the resources you're trying to move to your main account. Your farm exists to produce transferable resources. So don't blindly upgrade storage just because the game recommends it. Keep it low and functional. The same idea applies to the wall. You don't need to build a fortress that nobody cares about attacking. Invest in the things that make your farm productive. Now let's move into research, because this is probably the most important part of the entire setup. If your research is wrong, your farm can gather for months and still perform worse than a properly optimized farm. Your first objective is increasing the number of marches you can send. More marches means more resource tiles being worked at the same time. And that's incredibly important. Think about it this way. One march gathering for 10 hours is useful. 4 or 5 marches gathering for 10 hours is a completely different account. So prioritize the research that gives you additional march queues. After that, move into your economy and gathering research. Gathering speed should be one of your biggest priorities. Don't get distracted by research that makes your farm slightly stronger in combat. Your farm isn't here to win wars. It's here to collect resources. And remember, a 5% gathering improvement might look small on the screen, but your farm is gathering every day, for weeks, for months. Those small percentages keep working the entire time. That's why gathering research becomes more valuable the longer you keep the account. After your gathering priorities are handled, increase the research that improves how much your marches can carry. This is another detail people overlook. Speed isn't everything. Imagine 2 farms gathering from the same tile. One gathers faster but has a smaller march capacity. The other takes slightly longer, but brings back much more per trip. You want the combination. More marches, faster gathering, and enough troop capacity to make those marches efficient. And this brings us to troops. Don't make the mistake of thinking that a farm needs hundreds of thousands or millions of unnecessary troops. Your troop requirement should be based on your gathering setup. Basically, look at how many troops one march can effectively use. Then multiply that by the number of marches you can send. That's your practical target. You want enough troops to keep every gathering march running. You don't want an enormous army sitting inside your city doing absolutely nothing. And this is especially important because excess troops don't magically make your farm produce more resources. If your 5 marches are already gathering, having another 500,000 troops sitting inside your city doesn't increase your gathering income. It just creates another resource burden. So build your troop count around your actual gathering capacity. Now, early in the account, you can train a mixture of infantry, cavalry, and marksmen. But as your farm becomes more advanced, you can start thinking about specialization. One interesting strategy mentioned in the material is moving toward a more archer-focused farm later, especially when you understand how to use the account during defensive or event situations. This isn't something I would tell a brand new player to rush. It's an advanced optimization. First, build a healthy gathering farm. Then start thinking about specialized event uses. Now let's talk about heroes. This is another place where farm accounts can save you an incredible amount of resources. You don't need to build a collection of expensive legendary heroes. Your biggest priority should be heroes that improve gathering, especially your blue gathering heroes. Focus on their gathering-related abilities first. If you have additional resources later, you can improve their other useful abilities. But don't look at your farm and think, I need to build the same heroes I use on my main. You don't. Your main needs combat power. Your farm needs productivity. That's a completely different investment strategy. And here's another smart way to use hero resources. If you have heroes that are useful for other activities, don't automatically spend every shard you receive. Save them for events that reward hero progression when possible. That way, the same investment can give your farm additional event value instead of simply disappearing into upgrades. Now let's get into something that can completely change how you manage your farm. Your resources should not always be transferred immediately. I know that sounds strange. You create a farm because you want resources on your main, right? Yes, but constantly emptying your farm can actually reduce its long-term value. Think of your farm as a reservoir. Let it gather. Let the resources accumulate. Then transfer them when your main actually has a reason to use them. For example, if your main is preparing for a huge building upgrade, troop training event, healing phase, or kingdom versus kingdom preparation, that's when your farm becomes extremely valuable. Instead of transferring small amounts every day and constantly resetting your farm, you can build a stockpile and move a meaningful amount when the timing matters. This is especially important later when resource requirements become much larger. The game doesn't stay cheap forever. As your main account progresses, buildings, research, troop training, and healing become increasingly expensive. That's when the farm you've been quietly building suddenly becomes one of your most valuable assets. Now let's talk about protected and unprotected resources. You absolutely need to understand this before transferring anything. When you look at your resources in chests, pay attention to the shield indicator. Protected resources cannot simply be looted from the farm. Unprotected resources can be exposed and transferred. This is why you should never casually open a huge number of resource chests and then leave the farm sitting there for hours. If those resources are exposed and someone attacks your farm, they may be able to take them. So the safer routine is simple. Open what you need. Transfer what you need. Then stop. Don't expose your entire stockpile unnecessarily. And when you're ready to transfer resources from the farm to the main, there is another important step. Empty the farm's troops first. Send them out to gather, occupy, reinforce, or otherwise get them away from the city. Then attack your farm with your main. The point is to avoid unnecessary troop losses. You don't want your main attacking your farm and accidentally destroying troops that you spent days training. That would completely defeat the purpose. Now here's another strategy that I think is more important than most people realize. Don't always gather the same resource. Your farm should respond to what your main account is actually lacking. If your main is constantly running out of food, prioritize food. If wood is the problem, focus on wood. If you're entering a stage where stone or gold becomes your major bottleneck, shift the farm toward those resources. Your farm doesn't need to follow one permanent gathering pattern. It should support the current needs of your main. This is one of the easiest ways to make your farm more efficient without spending anything. Now let's talk about the daily routine. And this is where I want to make farm accounts sound much less intimidating. You don't need to sit on your farm all day. A properly built farm should take only a few minutes at a time. Log in. Collect your free rewards. Check your missions. Collect anything important. Restart troop training. Send every available march to gather. Check your event calendar. And then leave. You can do this once in the morning and once later in the day. That's it. The entire point is that the farm should work in the background while your main gets your attention. If your farm requires you to spend an hour every day managing it, you've probably made it too complicated. Now let's talk about events, because this is where a farm account becomes much more than a resource generator. During major kingdom events, your farm can contribute in different ways. You can use saved resources for troop training. You can support healing costs. You can gather additional resources during preparation phases. You can complete missions and collect rewards that your main account wouldn't otherwise have access to. And one of the most interesting strategies is saving energy. Instead of immediately spending every bit of energy your farm receives, you can allow some of it to accumulate. Then, when an event rewards you for activities that use that energy, you can spend the saved amount at the right time. This turns your farm into an event preparation tool instead of just a resource account. And that's the bigger idea I want you to take from this video. Your farm shouldn't only be useful today. You should be building it for the problems you're going to have weeks from now. For example, if a major KVK preparation phase is coming, don't wait until the event starts to think about your farm. Prepare beforehand. Gather, save, complete missions, build your stockpile. Then, when the event arrives, your farm is ready to contribute. The same thing applies to expensive troop upgrades later in the game. When higher tier troops arrive, resource requirements can become enormous. And if you've spent the previous months treating your farm like a small side account, you'll suddenly realize you don't have enough resources to support your main. But if you've been building your farm correctly from the beginning, you've already created a second source of resources. That's the real advantage. Now, how many farm accounts should you have? For most players, one good farm is better than several badly managed farms. If you have the time, you can eventually create additional farms. But don't create 5 accounts and then abandon all of them after 2 weeks because the workload becomes annoying. Start with 1. Optimize it. Learn the routine. Then decide whether you actually need another. Because the strongest farm isn't necessarily the account with the highest town center. It's the account that produces the most useful resources for the least amount of attention. So let me give you the entire strategy in one simple system. Create the farm in your main kingdom. Push the town center aggressively during the early game. Join an alliance as soon as possible. Prioritize the academy. Unlock additional marches. Maximize gathering research. Increase march capacity. Build enough troops to keep every gathering march active, but don't overtrain. Invest in gathering heroes, not unnecessary combat heroes. Keep your storage and wall low. Maintain your infirmary. Gather continuously. Don't expose unprotected resources unnecessarily. Empty your farm's troops before transferring resources. And most importantly, don't constantly drain the farm just because you can. Build the stockpile. Use it when your main actually needs it. That is what turns a basic farm account into a long-term resource engine. And here's the final message I want you to remember. A farm account isn't powerful because it gives you 1,000,000 resources today. It's powerful because it keeps working while you're doing something else. 1 day of gathering doesn't change your account. 30 days of gathering does. 1 small resource transfer doesn't change your kingdom. But having a farm ready when a massive upgrade, war, or KVK preparation phase arrives can completely change what you're able to do. So if you've been thinking, I'll create a farm later, stop waiting. The best time to start was earlier. The second best time is now. Build it slowly. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't waste resources trying to turn it into a second main. Make it efficient, make it consistent, and let it work in the background. Because in Kingshot, the players who prepare their resources before they need them will always have an advantage over the players who start farming only after they run out. And that's the real purpose of a farm account. Not just to collect resources, but to make sure your main account is never forced to stop progressing because you ran out of them. If this guide helped you understand farm accounts differently, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more Kingshot guides, and tell me in the comments how you currently use your farm account. And if you've discovered a farm strategy that most players don't know about yet, share it below, because it might help someone else on the server. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.